Welcome back to a new game recommendations list. This is 10 games that I recommend from the 6th generation of game consoles. So, original Xbox, PS2, GameCube, and Dreamcast from this gen. First up, for the original Xbox at number 10, I recommend if you like difficult find games and you like SNK or stuff type games, and you want a good challenge, this is a game I highly recommend. SNK versus Capcom SVC Chaos, which a few years back I did one playthrough of this game, and dang, I will say the difficulty is definitely up there. So yeah, seriously, if you like good challenges, here's a fighting game to try out. And if you don't think it's hard, check out Maximilian Dude. He did a boss rage of this game. But to show you again, I did a little bit of like the art style. Of course, it's more SNK art since they're the ones who actually did the crossover game. But this game is the game that would debut the character Violent Ken. This would be the game where he had his origins. Next up at number 9, easily the most successful out of the entire Soul Calibur franchise. But then again, this did get ported to 3 consoles. Plus, an HD online version was released on PSN and Xbox Live. But I decided to show instead the case to the GameCube version just because I know there's a lot of big fellow Link and Zelda fans out there. So I thought you'd appreciate this one I chose to show for number 9. Link is definitely one of the most overpowered, easily maybe the most overpowered guest character I've seen in the franchise. But it's cool that they give a pretty good rendition of his theme in this game. Plus, overall, I think the Namco was very loyal to the Link character. Next up at number 8, maybe one of the most overlooked and underrated of the Final Fantasy franchise. But to be fair, it's more of like a third-person shooter type of action game with elements of RPG. Well, it's definitely not a overall RPG. And yeah, like this shows on the front, this game revolves around a certain brooding vampire-esque character, of course, Vincent. Of course, Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy VII, which this game does actually take place several years after the events of the original game, and it takes place also after Advent Children movie, which I believe takes place about 2 years after the game, if I'm not mistaken. But seriously, this is a unique and interesting Final Fantasy game. If you're looking for something different to the normal traditional style, I recommend checking this game out. It's definitely interesting to say the least. And you can get this for a good price range as well. You can easily find this under $20. So yeah, it's definitely a good deal. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Soul Calibur 6, you can easily find that between 10 and 20. Probably about 20 to 25 for SNK versus Capcom. Next up, coming at number 7, from Nintendo, of course, exclusive to the GameCube, Pokemon Colosseum. Now, this is really the first Pokemon type game really outside of just the Pokemon staying with some more elements of the overall handheld games. Really, this was unique for its time when it first came out on the GameCube, and in my opinion is easily in the top 10, at least for me personally, top 10 favorite GameCube games of all time. It's definitely an interesting and fun game. Yeah, this would be the game that really introduced newer Pokemon such as Blaziken and others. But if you ever get a chance, honestly, check out Colosseum. Now, just a heads up, this will run a little bit more. On average, you're probably looking at the $30 to $40 range for Colosseum. So it does run a little bit more expensive, but given it's a Pokemon game, I'm not surprised. Next up, coming in at number 6 for the course Dreamcast. A true classic, all-time great, and I consider an essential Dreamcast game to own. If you want to, but you haven't started collecting, or you are a collector, I definitely consider this an essential to get. Shenmue is just a really fun game, and the bad English dubbing just gives it a little extra enjoyment out of me, because I've always had a guilty pleasure for bad English dubbing. But seriously, it's a great game. A lot of great elements that you would find in like traditional like martial arts type films. And it's cool how you can play mini games and go like a little digital arcade in the game and play classics from the Sega Master System era like Space Harrier, which is pretty cool. And on average, you're probably looking at $45.50 on average for Shenmue. Next up, coming at number 5, Silent Hill 3. For me personally, I'd probably rank Silent Hill 3 maybe my number 2. It's pretty much between number 2 or number 3 favorite game in the franchise as a whole. But I actually might lean more towards number 2 favorite of the Silent Hill games. I just really liked it, and this game more or less takes place, is a direct sequel to the original game, which is still arguably my favorite of the franchise. But Silent Hill 3 is just a really good survival horror game. This was back when Konami was actually a true game developer and actually listened to its fans and cared about things before they became a Pachinko company, more or less, nowadays. It's a really good, creepy game. Now, if you are curious about getting this, like some of the other Silent Hill games, this may run a little bit more. Cheapest of all the Silent Hill games is maybe Silent Hill 2, which you can get $20-25, then probably Origins. Silent Hill 3 runs probably more around the range of like 30 to 35 on average. And The Room, that game runs like over $40. It's become one of the biggest collectors. But seriously, if you get a chance, play Silent Hill 3. I recommend, though, playing the PS2 version rather than the really bad HD re-releases. They have so much glitches. Honestly, you're just better off playing the PS2 version of this game. Coming in at number 4 is definitely a game no stranger to any fighting game fan. At number 4 is Marvel vs. Capcom 2, New Age of Heroes. But yeah, this is a good game. Now, I, of course, personally recommend the Dreamcast version, but I decided to use this one just because since I still have the original box of this game for port. You can also get this on GameCube and PS2, just a heads up. The GameCube version is by far the most expensive port of the game, even though it's also like the most glitchy. You're looking at probably well over $100 for it. You can get the PS2 version for probably around the $50-$60 range. Original Xbox version, I think, is probably the second best version of the game. This version, you're probably looking at $40 or $50. It's still more reasonable than some of the years. Dreamcast version, you're probably looking around the like $40 to $60 range, around that. But yeah, it's because it's become a real big collector's item. It's just a great classic game in my opinion overall. But if you've never played Marvel vs. Capcom 2, do yourself a favor and check it out. Coming in at number 3, I dare say is one of the most overlooked JRPGs, hands down, of the 6th generation. Dark Cloud 2. Now, personally, I still like Dark Cloud 1 just a little bit more, but Dark Cloud 2 is gorgeous. I love that it uses a different art style from the first game. First game used more CG traditional style art wise. This one goes for more of a cell shade look, obviously. And if you look at the art style, it has very much an Akira Toriyama like feel to the art style, which I think is cool. But yeah, this is a really fun, really cool game, and I highly recommend it. If you're wondering, you can probably find Dark Cloud 2 for around $20 or so on average. It's definitely more than worth that, because you can easily get over 100 hours of gameplay out of this game. So I think that more than justifies the pickup of this game. Now, you can buy a digital port of this also on, like, I think PS3, and I believe it may now be available on PS4. So if you don't want to pick up the PS2 version, though I still think it's cool playing it, you can get like an remastered version if you want a more current gen consoles. It's up to you, but this is just recommendations. Number 2, for the Nintendo GameCube, preferably this version is my favorite. I'm not as big a fan of the Wii version of Twilight Princess. Now, I love this game because it is by far the darkest of all the Zelda games that I've played by far. And maybe that's one of the reasons I really like Twilight Princess is because of the more dark side to the game. But I much prefer the controller's design overall to this game. And I definitely like the art in this game as well. Now, if you're wondering price range, you can pick up the Wii version of this game for probably about $10, $12, dirt cheap. Now, if you want this version, you're probably looking at more $50 to $60 for GameCube. Just because it's become a much more higher collector's item. I think it's because people don't like the motion control thing like myself on the Wii version. But eventually, if the price drops, I'll get the Wii U port of this as well. But that is my number 2. Number 1 is you hear in the background music from this game. At number 1 recommendation, Resident Evil Code Veronica, which is still to this day arguably perhaps my number 2 favorite Resident Evil game in the franchise. To me, this was the last true Resident Evil game, or should I say the last true survival horror game of the franchise until more towards Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. But this game is incredible. I love the fact it revolves around Claire Redfield and Chris Redfield. That's one of the things I like most about this specific game. But if you ever get a chance, seriously, do yourself a favor and pick up Code Veronica or Code Veronica X. You can get like an HD version now if you want. Personally, and I have played and own this also on PS2, the Veronica X version. But I still prefer playing Veronica. I just prefer playing this game honestly on the Dreamcast over PS2. I don't know why. I just like the game with the Dreamcast controller for some bizarro reason. I'm not sure why. But this comes in at number 1. And I hope you enjoyed the Code Veronica music in the background. And I'll see y'all next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel.